His friends mocked me right in front of him, and he just stood there, silent. That silence hurt more than their words ever could. I want to take you back to the beginning, before the birthday, before the noise, before that moment burned itself into my chest. It started like any other normal plan, the kind you don't think twice about because love makes things feel safe and simple. He told me his friend was having a birthday party, nothing big, just a small get-together, cake, music, people we already knew. I remember sitting on my bed with my phone in my hand, scrolling through messages, smiling without realizing it, because when you love someone, even ordinary plans feel special. I said yes without hesitation, because of course I did, because at that time I still believed being by his side meant I belonged there too. The days leading up to it were full of small details, the kind that feel cute in the moment and heavy later when you replay them in your head. We talked about what to wear like it mattered more than it should have. He teased me about overthinking. I laughed and pretended I wasn't nervous, but I was. I always get a little anxious around his friends, not because they had done anything yet, but because I never fully felt seen by them. There was always this invisible line, like I was allowed to be present, but never fully included. Still, I pushed that feeling down because love teaches you to doubt your own instincts. The day of the party, we went shopping together for a gift. I remember walking through the store, lights too bright, music too loud, holding a box in my hands while he checked prices. He kept saying it didn't matter what we got, his friend would like anything. I cared more than I admitted because I wanted to show up right. I wanted them to see me as thoughtful, not just his girlfriend tagging along. We finally picked something simple, wrapped it neatly, and I felt this strange sense of pride, like I was contributing, like I belonged. Back home, I tried on outfits, changing again and again while he sat on the bed scrolling his phone, saying you look fine every time. But fine wasn't what I wanted. I wanted confident, accepted, safe. I settled on something simple, nothing flashy, nothing that could be judged too easily, or at least that's what I told myself. When we finally left the house, the evening air was cool and for a moment everything felt calm. We walked side by side, his hand brushing mine, not quite holding it, and I remember thinking maybe tonight will be different. Maybe I'm just imagining things. Maybe his friends will be warm, maybe he will stand closer, maybe I will finally feel like I'm not alone in a room full of people. The drive there was quiet but not uncomfortable, the kind of silence that feels normal when you've been together long enough. I watched the streetlights pass and rehearsed smiles in my head, like a performance I didn't realize I was preparing for. When we arrived, the house was already loud, laughter spilling out the door, music thumping through the walls. I took a deep breath before stepping in, because once you're inside there's no easy way out. The moment we walked in, his friends greeted him loudly, clapping his back, calling his name. I stood just behind him holding the gift, smiling, waiting for someone to notice me. A few quick hellos, a few nods, nothing rude, nothing kind either. I told myself not to be sensitive, not to read into it, not to make it a thing. We handed over the gift, birthday hugs, cheers, photos. I stayed slightly to the side like I always did, watching him blend into his world so easily while I hovered at the edges, trying not to disappear. At one point he leaned over and asked if I was okay. I said yes, because that's what you say when you don't want to ruin the mood, because you're afraid of being labeled dramatic or needy or too much. I didn't know then how important that small moment would feel later, because that was the last time he checked in before everything changed. As the night went on, the jokes got louder, the drinks kept coming, and the room felt smaller. I laughed when everyone laughed, even when I didn't fully get the joke. I nodded along to stories I'd heard before. I tried so hard to fit into a shape that wasn't made for me, and somewhere between the music and the noise I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, that quiet warning you ignore because you want the night to go well. I wish I had listened, because this was only the beginning, and the worst part wasn't the mocking or the laughter. It was realizing too late that I wasn't going to be protected, that love doesn't mean much when it goes silent in the moments you need it most. The night kept moving like a wave I couldn't step out of, and the longer I stood there, the more I felt myself shrinking. People were laughing louder now, voices overlapping, music cutting in and out, and every time I tried to speak it felt like my words dissolved before reaching anyone. I stayed close to him at first because that's what felt safe, like if I stayed near maybe I wouldn't feel so exposed, but he slowly drifted away, pulled into conversations, memories, jokes that didn't include me. I watched his body language change, how relaxed he looked, shoulders loose, smile easy, like this was where he truly belonged, and I was just someone visiting. I found myself standing near the table with snacks, pretending to be interested in chips I didn't even want, just to look busy. One of his friends looked at me, then looked at another and smirked. At first I thought I imagined it, because sometimes insecurity plays tricks on your mind, but then it happened again, a whisper, a laugh, eyes flicking toward me. I felt heat rise up my neck, that familiar mix of embarrassment and confusion. I told myself stay calm, don't assume, don't react. Then one of them said it out loud, not even trying to hide it. So did you get him permission to come tonight, or are you just letting him out on parole? Laughter exploded around them, sharp, sudden, and careless. It took me a second to understand what they were even implying, then it hit me and my stomach dropped. I forced a small smile, because that's what survival looks like in those moments. I looked at him instinctively, waiting for him to laugh it off or shut it down, or at least say something, anything. But he didn't. He just stood there holding his drink, eyes darting away like he suddenly found the wall very interesting. That silence wrapped around me tighter than any insult. Another comment followed. This one louder, Relax, it's just a joke, don't get mad, we know how girls are. More laughter. I felt my face burning, my hands shaking slightly, and I tucked them behind my back so no one would notice. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me. I wanted him to step forward, put an arm around me, say that's not okay, but he didn't move. He didn't even look at me. And in that moment something cracked quietly inside my chest. I realized I was standing alone in a room full of people who didn't respect me, and the one person who should have didn't defend me. I tried to breathe normally, tried not to cry because crying would only give them more power. I excused myself, pretending I needed the bathroom. The hallway felt colder, quieter, and I leaned against the wall for a second just to steady myself. I stared at my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the girl looking back at me. Her smile was gone, eyes dull, confidence stripped away. I asked myself silently, why am I here? Why am I letting this happen? I splashed water on my face, fixed my hair, and went back out because leaving felt like admitting defeat. When I returned, the energy had shifted like nothing had happened. They were laughing again, talking about old stories, inside jokes. No one acknowledged what was said, not even him. He caught my eye briefly, gave me a small smile like everything was fine. That hurt almost more than the jokes, because it told me he didn't see it as a big deal, or worse, he did and chose comfort over me. He drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting near his lap, music low like background noise neither of us was really listening to. I kept my eyes on the window because if I looked at him I knew my face would give me away. There was this pressure sitting in my chest, words lining up begging to come out, but I swallowed them down. I was tired of being the one to make things uncomfortable. At a red light he glanced at me and asked, "You okay?" That question hit differently now. I hesitated just long enough for him to notice, then said yeah. The lie tasted bitter. He nodded like that was enough and kept driving. That nod hurt, because it told me he wanted the easy answer, not the real one. When we got home I kicked off my shoes slowly, the house too quiet after all that noise. I placed my bag on the table and stood there unsure what to do with myself. He went straight to the kitchen, grabbed water like everything was normal. That normalcy felt cruel. I followed him, finally letting the words spill out before I lost the nerve. "I didn't like what your friend said to me." My voice was calm but inside I was shaking. He sighed, not angry, just tired, and said, "They were joking, you take things too seriously." Those words landed harder than any insult from his friends. I stared at him, waiting for him to add something else like an apology or understanding, but he didn't. I told him it wasn't funny, that it made me feel small. He shrugged slightly, said that's just how they are, and just like that he chose them again. I felt my throat tighten. I asked why he didn't say anything, why he didn't stop them. He looked away and said he didn't want to make a scene. A scene? I almost laughed at how unreal it sounded. I asked him, what about me, what about how I felt standing there? He said, "You're overthinking it, it wasn't that deep." That sentence broke something open inside me, because it wasn't about the joke anymore, it was about being alone while standing next to someone who was supposed to have my back. I walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed staring at my hands. He followed a few minutes later, still defensive, still distant. I asked him quietly if he would ever stand up for me. He didn't answer right away. That pause said everything. He finally said he didn't want problems with his friends over something small. Something small. I realized then that I was something small to him in moments where it mattered. The room felt heavier, my chest tight like I couldn't get enough air. I told him I felt humiliated. He said I should toughen up. I felt tears burning, but I refused to cry in front of him, not because crying is weak but because I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing how deeply he had hurt me. I lay down, turned my back to him, pretending to sleep while my mind raced. I thought about all the little moments I'd ignored before, the jokes he never corrected, the comments he brushed off, the times he asked me to adjust instead of asking others to respect me. They all lined up like puzzle pieces, finally making sense. That night sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes I saw that room again, heard the laughter, felt that silence. In the dark I asked myself a question I had been avoiding for a long time: what does love look like when no one is watching? Because if love doesn't protect you when it's inconvenient, what is it really? The next morning we moved around each other carefully. Small talk, shallow politeness, like two strangers sharing space. He acted like everything was fine, like the issue had passed because the party was over. But it wasn't over for me. It had settled deep inside. I felt different, quieter, more guarded, like something had shifted and there was no way to push it back into place. I realized then that this wasn't just about one night, it was about a pattern. About choosing peace with others over honesty with me, about comfort over courage, and that realization scared me more than the jokes ever did, because once you see the cracks you can't unsee them. And I knew part of me was already pulling away, trying to protect itself, even if I wasn't ready to admit it yet. The days after the party felt heavier than the night itself. Nothing dramatic happened, no shouting, no big breakup conversation, just this quiet tension that followed us everywhere. We talked about ordinary things: what to eat, what to watch, who needed groceries. But every word felt like it was floating above the real issue, never touching it. I started noticing how often I went quiet just to keep things smooth, how often I stopped myself from reacting because I didn't want to be called sensitive again. That scared me, because I was changing to fit into his comfort. He didn't bring up the party again. Not once. and that silence felt deliberate, like if we didn't talk about it, it would disappear. But it didn't. It sat between us when we ate together, when we lay in bed, when he reached for my hand and I hesitated. I began replaying that moment over and over, the laugh, the joke, his stillness. Every replay stripped away another layer of excuses I used to make for him. I caught myself flinching whenever he mentioned his friends. My body reacted before my mind could stop it. One evening he told me they were planning another get-together. He said it casually, like an afterthought. My chest tightened immediately. I asked if he wanted me to come. He paused just a second too long, then said, "Only if you want to." That pause told me everything. I said I'd think about it. The truth was I didn't want to put myself in that position again. I didn't trust him to protect me, and that realization hurt more than I expected. I started pulling back in small ways. Not texting as much, not sharing every thought, not reaching for him first. He noticed but didn't ask. Or maybe he didn't want to know the answer. At night I lay awake thinking about how many times I'd defended him to my friends. How many times I'd said he's just quiet, he's not confrontational, he means well. I wondered if I had been lying to them or to myself. One afternoon I stood in front of the mirror getting ready and I stopped. I looked at myself, really looked, and I asked, why do I feel smaller with the person who is supposed to make me feel safe? That question lingered. It followed me through my day, through my thoughts, through my silence. When he finally brought it up, it wasn't gentle. He said, "You've been distant lately." I nodded. He asked if I was still upset about the party. I said yes. He rolled his eyes just slightly, but enough for me to see. That gesture hurt more than words. I told him it wasn't just the party, it was how he handled it. He said again that I was holding on to something that should have been let go, that maybe I enjoy being hurt. That sentence stunned me. I felt something harden inside. I realized he wasn't trying to understand me, he was trying to erase my feelings. I told him calmly that I needed to feel supported. He said he can't fight everyone for me. I didn't ask him to fight everyone. I asked him to stand beside me. There is a difference. We stood there facing each other, two people speaking the same language but hearing completely different things. In that moment I saw the future clearly. More nights like that party. More jokes brushed off, more silences where I would slowly disappear, and I knew I couldn't keep doing that to myself, not because I didn't love him, but because loving him was costing me pieces of myself. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart. I didn't know what would happen next. I just knew something had to change, because staying silent was hurting me more than speaking up ever could. The decision didn't come all at once. It wasn't dramatic or loud or clear. It came in quiet moments when I realized how tired I felt all the time. Tired of explaining myself, tired of shrinking, tired of hoping he would suddenly become someone who chose me out loud. One night we sat on the couch watching something neither of us was really paying attention to. He laughed at the screen and I looked at him and felt this strange distance, like I was watching a memory instead of a partner. That scared me more than anger ever could. I thought about that night again, the birthday, the jokes, the silence, and I finally allowed myself to stop minimizing it. It wasn't just teasing, it was disrespect. And worse, it was abandonment in a room full of people. I asked myself a hard question. If this happened again, would anything change? Deep down I already knew the answer. The next day I asked him if we could talk. He looked wary, like he already knew where it was going. I told him calmly that I couldn't stay in a relationship where I felt unprotected, where my feelings were treated like an inconvenience. He said he didn't mean to hurt me. I believed him, but intention doesn't erase impact. I told him love should feel like someone standing beside you, not watching from a distance. He didn't argue this time. He just looked quiet, and that quiet felt final. There was no big fight, no raised voices, just two people realizing they were standing on different sides of the same truth. When it ended, it felt unreal. Like the world didn't change, but I did. I cried later alone, not because I missed him, but because I mourned the version of love I thought I had, the version where he would eventually choose me. Walking away wasn't easy. I questioned myself 100 times, wondered if I overreacted, if I should have been stronger, quieter, more patient. But every time I remembered that silence at the party, and how small I felt, and I knew I did the right thing. Time passed, the hurt softened, and something else took its place, relief. I started speaking up more, laughing louder, taking up space again. I realized how much of myself I had tucked away just to keep the peace. What that night taught me wasn't about his friends or a birthday party. It taught me that love without protection isn't love, it's convenience, and I promised myself something. After that, I will never again stay quiet to make someone else comfortable. I will never again mistake silence for peace, because the right person won't let you stand alone while they blend into the crowd. They will stand beside you even when it's uncomfortable, especially then. And if you're listening to this and you've ever felt that same silence, that same shrinking feeling, please hear me. You are not too sensitive. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong person, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from a place where your voice disappears.